All right, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today for today's Yoga and Recovery Chats. I'm Melanie Taylor, Facilitator and Director of Education at Eat, Breathe, Thrive. We are a nonprofit organization that aims to prevent and help individuals overcome eating disorders by providing skills and resources for mindful eating, emotional resilience, and positive embodiment. And I'm here with my friend Kristen. Kristen, do you want to introduce yourself?
I would love to. Hi, Melanie. I'm very excited to be here with you and everyone else today. I am Kristen Portland. I am a support group leader and executive director with ANID. We're a nonprofit that offers free peer-led support services to anyone with any level of eating disorder, disordered eating, body image concerns. Check us out. Everything's free, led by peers. And to just kind of let everyone know what to expect today, we're going to break this up into two halves. We're going to start with about half an hour of group conversation focused on our theme of thriving in the holidays, followed by half an hour yoga class that will be led by Melanie, and I will be following along, offering some, an example of one way to do so. And as everyone is joining, just a couple little housekeeping things. Please keep yourselves muted unless you're speaking. Feel free to use the chat if you're more comfortable doing that. This is somewhat participatory. We're going to be inviting you to answer questions, join us in the conversation, and we will be recording this, but your video feeds and names won't be displayed. But if you do unmute, your voice will be included. So if you prefer, feel free to just use the chat instead. We did agree to some community guidelines as you registered. So if you need any reminders about those, please feel free to go ahead and click through and check those out. And yeah, we are about to get started. But before we do, we are going to do just a super quick check-in. Just to respect everybody's time, we're going to do this in the chat. So feel free to take your answer, type it in there. And we're just going to go ahead and share first name, pronouns, and the answer to the check-in question, which today is, what does thriving look like to you? And what do you do to facilitate that? So just to get it going, that's a big question. So I'll let everyone start to think about that, get their typing ready. So Melanie, do you want to answer the check-in first or shall I?
I can answer.
Okay.
I think this is the beauty of it because it's going to be different for all of us. And I love that part about it. And remembering that it doesn't always for me, I think the first thing I have to remember is thriving isn't black and white. I'm a very black and white minded person. And so remembering that what I need for thriving in this moment might be different than what I needed for thriving even an hour ago or yesterday. But I think first and foremost, for me, it's like having those baselines that the things I know to do to care for myself are so much more important in the holidays that I don't skip them or jump over them or get too busy to handle them, or to take care of myself. I think that for me, that self-care is such an important part of that. And so that's a little bit more the second part, like how do I facilitate that, is really making sure like if I know I'm going to stay out late, I might have a nap earlier in the day, or I might plan that I'm going to sleep in the next day to really recover from that, but also taking breaks and scheduling breaks in between. For me, that's always a big part of thriving. It's like I go and I do something, I get a lot of interaction with people, and then I have downtime before I go and do that again. And what does it look like? I feel like I've got my feet on the ground. I feel like I can engage with whatever's in front of me. I can deal with any conversations without really rocking myself off that grounded foundation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I really like that. And I like that you mentioned being grounded too, because for me, you're right that thriving looks different at different times and for different people. But I find for myself, a big part of it, kind of in almost all situations, is being able to be just present and enjoy what's going on right now and not be worried about, oh, what comes next, which is a super easy thing to do in the holidays when you're like, okay, I need to plan gifts and the meal and there's travel logistics. And those are important things and you have to tick them off. But for myself, I have to remember that the point of them is to be able to enjoy the time that they lead up to And that if I'm at a holiday event and I'm more worried about how everyone's feeling or if the table looks pretty enough, then that's not thriving for me. And
Yeah.
I do a lot of self check-ins through that time, just to be like, okay, where is my head at? Am I here? If not, what can I do to be here? And some of it, just like you said, is taking breaks. If like, am I hungry? Am I thirsty? Am I tired? What can I do to fix these things right now? Some of the very basic self-care. And then for me, I'm very much an ambivert. I love being with people, and I also 100% need to go be by myself. So taking that time, and even if it's something as simple as like, all right, everyone, my dog really needs a walk right now. Oh no, I don't need any company. Then just getting out for a minute, that's something that I do pretty regularly. And I think my dog appreciates it too.
Exactly. It's like gotta be self-care and self-care at the same time. I love that. We have somebody in the chat box here that's mentioned, and I'll read it out here. Christine said she, hers, her pronouns. Thriving looks like living with intention, not fumbling from one thing to the next, which is what we were just talking about. I just love that. Having the space and freedom to make choices that are wise. Ooh, gold. Having practices and support that help me feel alive in my body and grounded. Thanks for sharing that. I appreciate that. And I see we've got somebody has their hand up. So Stacy will reiterate as well that you are welcome to come on camera as well as speak openly, whichever feels good for you.
Hi, I'm Stace in Eugene, Oregon, and since I'm the loner type, and so I don't have events, I don't travel, I don't have gatherings, but that can also be lonely when that's the expectation at this time. And so for me, feeling well, what thriving looks like to me is I like the grounded, Melanie, that helps a lot, but really feeling safe and secure and serene and peaceful. For me, that's thriving, is where I'm at, just a calm.
I love that.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing, Stace.
We had someone else share in the chat as well. Anna Mae typed in that being kind and compassionate to self, cutting yourself some slack, not reprimanding yourself if one makes a mistake, be grounded and practice lots of self-care, resting, not restricting sleep, do my yoga practice and smiling with self, giving myself lots of hugs, journaling, and going for a run in the park. That resonates with me a lot as well. Like cutting yourself some slack and not reprimanding yourself if you make mistakes. I continually work to kind of notice that perfectionism in myself and offer some space. And I find it easy to give that grace to other people. And it is a constant practice to show it to myself as well. So thanks for calling that out. I really like that one.
And Pat just shared thriving right now means setting an intention for the day and trying to stay in the moment. Oh, so great. I love that. It's just, I love that that we're trying, right? This is not about perfectionism. It's not about getting it right all the time. It's being able to hold that space for ourselves. Yeah. Kath, I see your hand up.
Yeah, hi, my name's Kath. I'm calling from West Coast, Canada. That's an interesting question because I've had to redefine what thriving means for me. Because I have DID as well as different eating disorders. And so it's going to be a lifelong thing to manage. And if I get caught in thinking that I've got to thrive, I've got to be doing all these amazing things, I feel an immense amount of pressure that I put upon myself to have it all together. And sometimes in that moment, I need compassion and self-compassion rather than increased pressure to do all the things and do the right things. So I've decided for me that thriving means going to therapy every week, attending one support group of some kind every day. I don't get outside much, so I don't really have a lot of friends, but I've decided For right now, I'm just going to keep my group small and fairly kind of anonymous in a supportive environment and build from there, to choose like, you know, solid, stable friendships, and self-care, making sure that I kind of nourish my body as much as I can. Not perfection, but even the smallest of choice, like if I could do something that's more harmful to my body versus something that shows its self-compassion, I take that choice. So I think that when I see that word thriving, I think that, yeah, for me, it's meant a bit of a paradigm shift in how I look at it.
That's such an incredible way of thinking about it. And like Melanie said in the beginning as well, it will look different at different times. And Kathy, you spelled out such amazing steps for yourself. You just seem so thoughtful. And I just want to call out that it does seem like you're being really kind to yourself and making really, really good choices for you and where you are now. And I just want to honor that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm so glad to see you here, Kath. I think Jen said something in hers here as well, and I'm not going to read all of it, maybe part of it here that I think really ties into what you're saying here, is my worth is not based on my productivity. Whew. And I have had to be radically honest with myself on what I have to do to preserve my mental health. I put myself first now. Oh, that is thriving. Like, just if you think about, I love how you said that it can really feel almost like pressure, like it's this big word, something we have to accomplish, versus something we get to do and we get to cultivate for ourselves. And it doesn't mean we thrive all the time. It means we think about, what do I need to set myself up for thriving? And I just love that sense of self-compassion that I'm hearing in what you're saying, Kath. Yeah.
Jen, thank you for that. I'm glad to see you here. And then Katie wrote in the chat as well that I found this time of year really hard on my own and find that the busyness around me from others still rubs off on me. And I can then struggle not to prioritize self-care and kind routines I need to help myself. I love that, the kind routines that you need. That is so important. I'm realizing that there's a big difference between thriving and striving, and have been curious recently as to why I put so much pressure on myself to keep busy and doing and on top of things. Yeah, one of the ways I notice in myself that my anxiety is getting bigger is when I feel the need to be doing at all times. If I have a hard time like sitting still or just being calm, if I'm like up and moving constantly, it's kind of a yellow flag for me that like, hey, something's going on. And so it seems like that sense of doing and busyness is something that a lot of people feel, and I'm not alone with there.
Yeah, it's that saying that we're not human doings, we're human beings. And I think we all get in that. We all get in that place of in a society of productivity, we celebrate productivity in our society quite a bit. We drown in that a little bit. And I think that sometimes can take over from self-care and self-compassion, and really get in our self-concept as well, and kind of mess with that a bit. And so I really sort of had this theme of being in this grounded, present, caring for, compassionate space. If holidays are for anything, it's a time to practice our self-compassion, and that's not a perfectionist thing that we can do. It does take that healthy striving versus the perfectionism striving. One of our dear friends, Catherine Cook-Catone, she's our lead researcher here, says that perfectionism is romanticized rigidity. I just love it. Right, it leads to that like perfectionism approach that I have to be and look and be seen a certain way, versus healthy striving, which is more self-compassionate and caring for ourselves and listening to our needs.
That resonates, and I just want to share a win that I had over Thanksgiving. I'm in the US, so we do the full-on turkey on the table, 8 million sides, stressful food meal thing. And in my house, we host, and I am responsible for a lot of it. I choose to be responsible for a lot of it. I'm not going to try to skirt that one, but a lot of it I like. But this year, I completely ruined the sweet potatoes. I like totally, they were completely inedible. And I remember I was standing in the kitchen and I had like family and a couple of friends around me, and a couple of people tried it and they were just like, "Ooh, Kristen, I don't know if we can save this." And there was definitely a time in my life where I would have not been able to handle that at all. Like I would have been devastated, felt like everything is terrible. How could you possibly do this meal without this one specific thing? But this time I was mad for a minute, but then I threw them away and pulled out another thing that I made and moved on. And I didn't really register at the time, but now as we're talking about this and the level of perfectionism, I'm kind of retroactively very proud of myself, because that's a thing that definitely would have made me spiral at one point.
I love that. There's so much, like everything you just said, there was a lot of self-compassion, like letting go of what is out of our control and not holding on to things that kind of those things we grip and hold on to that are really unhelpful. So I'm curious about other wins that you guys have had, and you know, in the United States. You guys just went through Thanksgiving. I'm in Canada, so our Thanksgiving is a little earlier in the year. But I'd love to hear from the group. Are there any wins, whether it's this year or previous holiday or just in your week, that you can see this self-compassionate approach to caring for yourself and prioritizing yourself? So feel free to share that, either putting your hand up or pop something into the chat.
I was also set some boundaries this year. We have people around a lot, because you know there's the people visiting from out of state, and then everyone comes to hang out here to be with the visitors. And I said no to some people. Like it was too much. We just needed some time to relax. And I told some people that no, they could not come back to stay for a third night, because we just needed a little bit of time. And that, like, they weren't happy about it, but it was what we needed. So I feel good about doing that as well.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I've recognized for me, there's certain travel trips and things we always go and like stay with family, and that I was finding myself getting really burned out and really struggling. You know, we get like a day or so in, and there's so much going on and so many people. But I found that if we stay somewhere else, and then we can come in the morning, we can spend the whole day, but we can leave at the end of the day and have that break time. That it's been such a simple unlock to having the rest that I need and the quiet that I need. If I need to step away, I can leave and go there for a little bit and come back. And really giving that quiet space, because I find a lot of noise and a lot of movement, like sensory overload, can be really challenging. And it was like the simplest thing to do is say, actually, you don't have to worry about making a bed for me or taking care of breakfast or things like that. We're going to stay here. We'll see you at 9 or 10 or whatever time of the morning. And that little boundary has made such a difference for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
so, go ahead.
It's easier said than done for some people too, right? Boundaries, even when they're really important to you, there's a chance that people will take them negatively. And I've seen that in family. I've had family members say, "Don't you even think about staying at a hotel?" And like I can just imagine those people, how they would react. But it's okay. Holding boundaries can be uncomfortable, but it's an important thing, and it's an okay thing. Like it's part of self-care.
Yeah, I'm gonna be straight. It was a challenging boundary to set, and was hard for people to understand. Like, why did I want that? And that's okay, right? Like, and I think taking care of myself through that was, it's okay that not everybody's gonna like that decision. And really considering, why was I making it? It was making the holidays more pleasant for everyone, myself included. So being able to put my feet on the ground, right? That whole grounding piece of like really feeling safe in my environment. And I love how that was put out earlier, that what is grounding? It is feeling safe. It is reminding my anxiety that I'm not floating. I'm not up here somewhere and I can't, right? Like that I'm actually feet on the ground, and even I sometimes even like rub my feet back and forth to be like, no, actually I'm right here. I'm attached to the earth in some way. And leaving space for upset or frustration for me and for the other person. And then, I mean, it took a couple years before it was like, that's just what happened, that Mel was staying somewhere else and nobody seemed to really notice that I was doing it. It didn't seem to come up anymore. So it did take a few times of doing that to create that sense of like, that's the normalcy of it. Yeah.
One boundary that I'm working on creating normalcy around with my family right now is to not talk about diets and bodies and how much food people are eating. Because it's something that, you know, I've put a lot of work in. Like and the people who are always around me now, they get it, they know the boundaries, but the people who show up once in a while who make all of those standard diet culture comments, especially around the food holidays, of what they're going to do to compensate, or commenting on other people's foods or things that they do or don't want to eat. Trying to shut that down has been really important to me, especially because my daughter's 3 now. She's starting to understand, and I don't want her to internalize that, especially from the people around us. So this is what I do. Like, I know all of the reasoning behind it. I find it really easy to talk to other people about it, but when it's my family, it's just so much harder. But this year I was able to redirect and tell a couple people like, hey, and I find it easier to do when it's for my daughter and not for myself, to be able to say, hey, you know, don't talk about that around her. Or in our house, we only look at what's on our own plates. We don't worry about other people's. And again, still working on it, still trying to make that an accepted boundary in my household, but it is something I'm gonna keep working on for, you know, myself, my daughter, really everyone.
Yeah. Oh, I saw, I can always like feel that sense of like everyone together collectively, like Katie's put in, like, so true. This collective, like, yes, if we could actually stop that conversation, whether that's about food, about body shape, about exercise, or like just the whole diet culture as a whole, how much easier it would be to be together. And that boundary, to your point, I think I was very similar in that, you know, I didn't want Caitlin, my daughter, to grow up with that language. It was much easier to say that for others, which in itself is a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Has anybody, you know, whether it's in the chat, I think this is something that everyone could probably use a little bit of support in. Is there something that you've done that's worked, or a way of setting that boundary that's been helpful for you? Yeah, and Katie's put in here as well. Sister's boyfriend does that whole, I can have seconds or eat this because I did a park run this morning, or we'll go on a bike ride later. So compensatory conversations. Yeah, it's like it's earned, like that earning food. Yeah. And Stacey's mentioned here, Stacey, that's less threatening to use a child to point out the impact on children. Absolutely. It sounds to me like one of those, you know, when I was as a parent, I would always tell my kids, like, blame your parents. Always go ahead and blame your parents. I can't because my parents, right? And they taking that route that does feel less threatening, or does feel more safe to communicate in that way. Absolutely taking that, and that's not always available, whether there's children there or whether you have them and you're bringing them, or someone else's children that are there. It's a challenging conversation to have. It's so wrapped up in how we talk in society, and so recognizing that, and not making it wrong that people feel that way, although, you know, we know the impact it can have on ourselves.
And Katie, you're right. It is hard to know how to communicate that when you don't have the convenient, cute little kid to say, oh no, protect them. But we're all worth protecting too. And if there's something we need to do to protect ourselves, it's harder. I know. Like, I have so much of a harder time doing it for me than doing it for my daughter, but that is important. And There have absolutely been times when I couldn't call it out. You can't always call it out. Depending on the situation you're in, it might not be safe. It might open a bigger can of worms, but finding other ways to take care of yourself, I think that's an important toolbox to have available as well. Whether it's leaving or redirecting, there are things you can do that aren't specifically saying, hey, we're not going to talk about this, and opening up the why or what's wrong or I'm not doing anything. Like sometimes you just don't have the energy for that, and that's okay too. So
Mhm. Yeah, this is why I said earlier on, there's times when I need a break, and being able to step away from a situation that can be really activating, or causing a response where we don't feel safe to respond, or don't feel safe to talk about it, or don't want to broach the conversation because they are really challenging. And so being able to take that time to take care of ourselves in that situation, I think is really important as well. Not everything has to be done through a conversation. I think taking care of yourself in that moment is priority one. Care for yourself first, then consider whether or not it feels safe to have a conversation about it. And if it doesn't, that's okay. How do you care for yourself when those conversations are happening? I think is also an important part of this.
totally agreed. Jen just
Yeah,
typed in.
Jen said that here. Yeah, I was just saying,
Mhm.
I've not been able to voice it. I've excused myself. I've always had an arrival time and set departure time, and then have time after to take care of myself. It's just so well done to really consider ahead of time. And that's, I think, about thriving. The things that we do is proactively considering what we might need, putting those things in place for when we need them. And if we don't, great. But most of the time I find that I do. And I'm so grateful that I've set that time aside for myself.
And what Jen shared as well about communicating it, like having an arrival time and a set departure time, it removes the conversation of like, oh, wait, you can't leave yet. Oh, actually, I can. We talked about that. So yeah, thanks for sharing that, Jen. Oh my gosh, and Stace, you're totally right that eating disorders thrive in isolation and secrecy. 100%. 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're getting close to that time for a yoga practice. So I'm thinking about what type of yoga practice I wanted to share today. And I really thought about this place of self-compassion, where that comes from, and how I always feel like tight, like I'm kind of pulling in and protecting myself. So we're going to do a little bit of heart openers today, and a little bit of hip opener. And as a yoga teacher trainer, I think there's this interesting part about how hip openers are used. And so I want to share some really gentle hip openers, because it is a place, tension in shoulders and chest area in our hips are places that we can somatically store a lot of emotion. And so today I wanted to do something really gentle, thinking about what is it like to really thrive is to gently take care of myself. It's not about, again, that perfectionistic approach. I need to like jump in and pull my band-aids off and fix everything, but more gently and progressively care for myself every day. So that's what I'm going to share. I'm going to move over to my mat. And I can see that Stacy's got her hand up. So maybe if you want to facilitate that, and I'll move over. I'm going to just switch my camera in the meantime.
Let's do it. Stace, what's on your mind?
Yeah, the comment I wanted to make is holidays, dysregulated eating. And when I do have a difficult day with dysregulation, I write about it, and then I send it in a chat to my therapist right away, so that when we talk about it, or so that to make sure that we do talk about it, because since dysregulation thrives in isolation and secrecy, if I don't hold myself accountable, even after something dysregulated has happened, I won't tell her about it, because days will pass and I'll think, oh, that was then. But I'll make sure I write to her right away and let her know. So that's like the first step, or a step in trying to hold myself accountable when I'm alone.
Thank you for sharing that. And I know we're about to start the practice, but I think that's so important. And that's a tool that I use too, being able to share things, write things ahead of time in the moment where you're feeling motivated or able to share. Because I know for me, that's not always there. There have been times when I emailed my doctor ahead of time to say, hey, this is a thing I need to talk about, because I know that if I get there, there's a solid chance I'm not going to be able to make the words come out of my mouth. So setting myself up to succeed there is such an important tool. So Stace, thank you so much for bringing that up. And Katie, to your point as well, there will be absolutely some seated exercises. Mel's running this, but I can say almost certain things.
Absolutely. And I'm gonna start seated. And when we do some hip openers, maybe Kristen, I'll have you do the laying down version, and I'll grab my stool and do the seated variation of those hip openers as well, so that you can follow along with that. And you know, I'm going to invite you to start by finding a seat, any seat. So it can be exactly where you are. There's no need to be on a mat. Yoga never used to have mats. That's pretty new. So I'm going to talk about that grounding. And at Eat, Breathe, Thrive, this is one of the things we do a lot of, is focusing on how do we actually ground, and less of the ethereal part of grounding. Not to say that isn't great as well. You know, if sitting and feeling roots from your body working their way into the ground works for you, wonderful. And I want to do a little bit more physical grounding. And what I'm doing is we're using the body to send communication to the brain that says, I'm connected to this earth, right? So I'm going to start just by rocking a little bit around on my sits bones, maybe little circles or just side to side, and just noticing the parts of your body that are touching the mat, the chair, the cushion that you're sitting on, however you're seated. And if you move a little forward and back, you might even notice your feet and how they're touching the earth. And as you rock back a bit more, sits bones, even the upper thighs, rocking forward, you feel the feet. You might even notice gravity. What is gravity doing right now? Sometimes for me, like really tapping on the earth. It's like I can feel it. I know it's here. Can be really helpful. And I mentioned earlier, you know, when my anxiety hits, I feel like I'm floating, in the sense of like noticing and communicating to my brain that I'm touching the earth can be really helpful. And you can do that anywhere. You can do that standing in the kitchen, in the living room, taking your walk, is feeling that sense of feeling connected to the earth. And let's take a moment, and you can practice this with your eyes open or closed, whatever feels accessible at this moment. I'm going to do my eyes closed at the moment. I'm trying to try this when I feel safe to do so. Is notice 5 things about your room. So things that your senses can help you with. Find 5 things about your room. So you might notice things you can see with your eyes open or closed. What is your favorite item in the room? You might notice things you can hear, maybe the humming of technology. Is there any noise in the background? Maybe there's something you can smell. Can you feel the skin feeling the air? Maybe that's through temperature, other parts of your body that are warmer or cooler based on the clothing you're wearing. And this is also, it's called orientating. So getting to know where you are in time and space. So these are 2 techniques that I find really helpful that I use every day. Just get present to where I am, either more internally with grounding or more externally with orientating. Okay, so bringing hands to heart center, wherever that is for you. And listen to your breathing. See if you can notice, with that same kind of checking in, how do you feel your breath in this moment? Is there a body part you feel moving? Do you notice the air as it moves in and out of your nose or mouth? And can you start to become aware of its rhythm and getting connected to your breath pace at this moment? And that's the pace I want you to move at today. Is at your own breath's pace. So on your next inhale, letting the arms reach their way up overhead. Exhale, open the arms out to the side, as far back as it feels comfortable, coming back to hands at heart center. So inhaling up. Exhale, open and back to heart center. And notice if you started to follow my words and not your breath. Come back, pause for a moment, find your breathing again. And then moving at your own pace, as though you can start and stop your movement at the pace of your own breathing. And do a couple more here. And then bringing your hands back to heart center. So in yoga, we talk about the myofascia, the connected tissue in the body. And this line is, I call it the heart line or the arm line. And so I like to think about your fingertips all the way across the front of the body to the other fingertips, and then across the back of the body as well, this heart line. And I think what we do with this line the most is hug. So I want you to really listen into this area of the body. I think when we get into hip openers or heart openers, we try to expand and do all this work, but just to do this, listening to what sensations are happening in your heart line, so front and back of the body, and being really gentle as you do that. So let's bring our arms forward in front of us, and take an inhale, bring the arms back, and breathe into the front of the heart line. Again, don't try to press back too far. This isn't about opening that line. It's about listening to that line and finding some sensation. Exhale, bring the hands forward and breathe into the back of the heart line, the back of the body. Inhaling and open. Exhale and close. And as you're following your own breath's pace here, just imagine that breath making space in the front and making space in the back of that line. And I'm going to invite you to become a little playful here. If you'd like to move the arms down a bit or up a little bit as you do that and get a little dancey in your movement, you might even want to curl the spine behind you as you reach the hands back forward. But listening to your own heart line, listening to any tension that you're finding there. Perhaps you'd like to pause and play in one side, still breathing, and then moving again when you feel ready. Let's take one or two more breaths here, and then you can bring your hands down to your knees. And take a moment, reconnect with your breath if you've lost that connection. Let's take the right arm, let your shoulder drop nice and relaxed, and bring the hand in behind you. So it doesn't matter how far back it is, just place it behind the body and really think about that right shoulder. Let it drop and relax. And with that placement, so shoulders are down and relaxed back a little bit, let's take our left ear towards our left shoulder, so away from the right arm, and really listen, less about trying to get the ear to the shoulder, more listening into the body, Remembering to breathe. And then keeping your ear to the shoulder where it is. On your next exhale, let's take your nose and just tilt it down towards the left armpit. And remembering to breathe here. Use an inhale. You can turn that nose up, keeping ear to shoulder. If you'd like, either you can move and stay, or if you'd like, you can move back and forth. I really love moving back. It's my favorite. Kind of getting into all the little nitty-gritty sensations that are there. And just listening for yourself. Maybe there's a spot halfway that you'd like to stop and breathe into. Take 1 or 2 more breaths here, exploring this movement. Before you bring the head back up, bring that nose back to that neutral position, so ear to shoulder. Can release the right arm and bring the head back up to center. Either be in stillness here, maybe roll the shoulders a little bit, lift them up and down. And let's move to the other side. So left arm behind the back, shoulders nice and relaxed. Take a nice deep breath in. Exhale, right ear to right shoulder. Again, we're not trying to get the ear anywhere or have it look a certain way, but more listening into your body sensation. What feels like a nice place to explore here? Breathe into that. When you're ready, you can start playing, moving your nose towards the armpit on the right side this time. Take a few breaths and hold. And coming back up. And you can play with either moving from one to the other or finding a nice place to be and hold. Whatever feels good in the moment, listening to your body. To this side newly. Perhaps it's different from the other. It's a whole other shoulder after all. Taking 1 or 2 more breaths here. Again, turning that nose back to neutral, ear to shoulder. Release the arm and then bring the head back up. Do a little roll of the shoulders here. Maybe some seated cat-cow if that feels good. Again, as you're moving in this way of listening into the body in between, being present to the breath as it moves in and out of the front of the arm line and the back of the arm line. So the last one we'll do with the arms here is I'm going to bring my arms into eagle arms. So I'm going to put elbow on top of elbow. And then my arms aren't going to reach to right. That's fine. So just finding a way to bring the fingertips up towards the top in whatever way they are. If you find that you can clasp the hands or part of the arm, great. If you don't, great. It's not the goal. The goal is to breathe into the back body right now. So take a nice deep breath in. Feel that all the way along the back of the heart line. Exhale fully. If you want to add a little movement here, you can play with, keep your shoulders nice and back down, and play with just lifting the elbows up a little bit and down a little bit. Just about a centimeter or so for the Canadians that are with us, and about an inch, half an inch, somewhere in there for the Americans that are with us. Just a little subtle movement here, again, breathing into that back body. And then release. So I'm going to bring a stool in for the hip openers. So if you'd like to lay down on your mat, find a position that feels comfortable. Bend the knees, place the feet on the ground. Thanks, Kristen. So great. All right, so first to just bring your attention to grounding again. So noticing the parts of your body that are connected with the mat in this new position. Remembering that you can wiggle a little bit if you want to bring some attention to those areas. And if you've moved, maybe notice those 5 things that you knew were in the room or about the room that you're in. Notice that you've moved, but they haven't. That you know where you are. So I'm going to start with a bit of windshield. So for those of us that are seated, I'm actually quite far forward on my stool so that I've got a bit more movement room with my legs, but still feeling really grounded and supported by the stool. And I'm going to move a little bit from side to side with my knees. And I'm going to invite you to do this with your own breath. So exhaling to the side, inhale to center, exhale the other side. So let yourself slow it down to the pace of your own breathing. Knowing you can always pause if something feels really yummy. Taking a few more breaths here, moving at your own pace from side to side. Coming back to neutral. I'm going to move back a little bit in my chair so I feel a little bit more supported. And I'm going to pull the right knee up. So you can do that just by holding your arms underneath, getting back in your chair so you feel supported, or hugging that knee in. And as you do that, the hamstring muscles, the back of the thigh muscle, and draw that down towards the mat or towards your chair as you hug and pull in with your arms. So you're pulling away from yourself. So your hands are pulling you towards your knee towards your nose. Lost my words there. And your hamstring kind of pulling away from that, like it's drawing towards the floor or towards the chair. Little tug of war. Release that side. Take a moment. If you'd like a little windshield in between, you can, or just a little jiggle of the legs. And then try the other side. Again, creating that little counteracting pull. So lifting and pulling with your arms and drawing the hamstring towards the floor or the chair. And release. Give a little jiggle, a little bit of movement here in between if that feels good. All right. So let's bring one foot up on top of the other thigh. Thanks, Kristen. There we go. So figure 4, those of you that know the poses, let's flex that foot so your toes are pointing same direction as your knee is pointing. And let's just start here for a minute. No pushing or pulling, trying to hug in or anything. Just listen to that subtlety of any sensation you notice in the body in this moment. You think about gentle hip openers. It's not always about pressing or pulling, but listening to what's there in that early stage of the pose. Without using your hands, just think about using your leg. Gently press your knee either towards the ground if you're in a chair, or towards the end of the mat. I'm just giving it a little bit of body traction here. You might even find a little rocking here feels good. So I'm just using my left foot to rock a bit back and forth. And if you're on the mat, you just use your hips to gently rock a little bit back and forth. And then if you'd like to do a little hugging in, I'll give you a couple options. If your feet are on the ground and you're laying down on your mat, you could even just come up on your toes of the left foot. So just bringing the legs in a little bit. And if you'd like to reach through and hug in, you can do that as well. For those of us that are seated, we keep our left foot grounded on the mat or on the floor. Take a nice deep breath in, elongate that spine, and just gently lean forward. So again, it doesn't have to be a big movement, something gentle and little. I've moved about a couple inches, 3 or 4 centimeters. Breathing again. And then coming back to a neutral position. See if there's a little wiggle here that you want, a little windshield. Perhaps you want to hug a knee in or both knees in. Just letting yourself move in between, whatever feels instinctual for you. And let's do the other side. So again, flex that foot. So your toes and your knees are pointing in the same direction. Begin by just finding the pose and breathing. Noticing any sensation you find without any push or pull. You can add that gentle pull with the leg, knee away from the body, so towards the floor in my chair or the end of your mat. And gently and progressively adding sensation. Breathing into whatever you find along the way. And then if you'd like to lift the toes or hug in the knee or forward fold, go ahead and do that. Again, listen for that first feeling of sensation in the movement. Stop and breathe into that space. Taking care of every little sensation you find. Couple more breaths here. And release. Give it a little jiggle. So again, thinking about the hips as well. We're going to think about the back of the hips. We've done a lot of the inner thighs. I want to think about the back of the pelvis here as well. So seated, I'm just going to cross my legs. You do the same thing in your laying down position, a bit of an eagle pose there. I'm just going to draw my foot towards the floor and do the same thing in your laying down position. The leg that's up, just draw that towards the floor, the mat. Breathe into all the sensations you find. Noticing if you let the foot relax a little bit, but you're still getting a stretch, just pull that back a little bit there. And then re-engaging as much pull of the foot as you want. Find that little sweet spot. And release. Do a little jiggling in between before moving to the other side. Again, drawing that foot to the floor, really listening into how much pull you want here. And take a moment to release that before re-engaging. Again, finding just as much pull of that foot as you'd like. And release. And then just finding a place of stillness, whatever feels comfortable for you. I'm just going to take 1 minute for a little self-compassion exercise here before we close off for the day. So just finding that comfortable position and finding that flow of your breath. If it feels comfortable to do so, you can place a hand anywhere over that heart line. And bring to mind a person, place, or thing that makes you feel safe. So if that was a person, maybe notice in your mind's eye the distance between the two of you that feels safe. Notice how you feel in that person's presence. Maybe you've picked an animal or your favorite item or the favorite bench to sit on. Just again, be with that. How does it feel in your body to be in the safe place with the safe person or a safe item? And let yourself notice any sensations that you feel in your body, allowing that safety to be felt throughout the whole body as much as you can imagine it being there. Relaxing the arms. When you feel ready, coming back to the room. Welcome back, Kristen.
Thank you.
So I want to thank everyone for coming and being here with us today and for sharing. And I think that's one of the best things that we can have. I think about the holidays, like the best parts of it is the community and being able to feel comfortable in community. So thank you all for being here with us and sharing with each other. It's always so amazing when that happens.
Melanie, thank you for that practice. I feel amazing. That last
Oh,
exercise was
welcome.
really
You're welcome. There will be a recording shared. We do not have a date yet for the next one. In fact, Kristen, her team, and Chelsea and I are meeting very shortly to talk about that. We'll definitely have those posted on both of our website when that happens. You will get an email from me in the next couple of days once our amazing team has put the video together. It will also be on our YouTube channel, and I know Kristen will be sharing it at Anad as well. Any final things you wanted to say, Kristen?
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone for sharing. This is T-Rex, by the way. He came to crash. But it's really amazing getting to be in a space with people who are thinking about what self-care is to them, sharing with us. And I really love being here. And if anyone needs more resources, I know Eat, Breathe, Thrive has some incredible stuff, and so does ANID. We have free peer support services, support groups, helpline, mentorship program. There's space for everyone. So you're not alone, and please check it out if you feel like it could be helpful.
Absolutely. And my email is going to include links to all of those resources and programs that we have for both. So thank you all so very much. And all the love that's coming in the chat box. I'm so glad you were all here. I know you filled my cup up as well. And I can see other puppies that have enjoyed connecting with us as well. What do we do without our support animals? It's so lovely to see. Thank you everybody for being with us today. Much love. Enjoy your holidays and know that we are both here if you need any support in the community.